Good day, everybody. I made a mistake on my video entitled "New York Knicks fans: How do we define a bust?" It came up twice in my playlist. In one of the instances, it was showing views, and the other one, it was showing that it had been viewed. So the one that had not been viewed, I deleted it. And when I deleted it, it deleted both of them. I don't know what happened, but so that one, if you were looking for it, it's gone. So this video is going to redo that one basically. And I'm kind of glad because I did make some mistakes in that, as some of you pointed out, and I appreciate some of you pointing that out. Um, Defining what a bust is. Okay, let's start again. Let me start from scratch. And let's understand what a bust is not. A player is not a bust if he's drafted because of a certain expectation. And again, draft is hopes and expectations. That's what you're dealing with the draft, because there's no sure thing. We never know how a player is going to turn out. We can only hope and expect based on what we've scouted, what we've seen in history. Okay. So hopes and expectations make up what a team goes into when they pick a player in the draft. The lottery is called the lottery because those are supposed to be the best players available to be drafted. And the hopes of every team are, number one, can this player help us win? Possibly be a piece for a playoff team or a championship team. And two, in winning, it's going to help the owner make more money because of the exposure, because winning brings a lot of exposure, so you get more money, advertisement, endorsements, so on and so forth. You can jack your ticket prices up and you make more money. So those are the factors that go into drafting a player. So these are factors that teams are using to draft a player. Now, a bust is not a player that seems to be struggling in their first 2-3 years in the league. A while ago, the NBA figured out that it takes a player about 4 seasons to really begin to understand the NBA. Now, you have exceptions, of course, but that's generally the case, which is why when NBA players in the unions and they discuss with the owners the parameters of the deal they make, one of those deals was that the rookies were going to be on a salary scale and they were going to have 4-year contracts. Okay, and because that's what it takes, 4 years generally. So a player is not a bust if he doesn't seem to be working out in his first or second season. Okay, and that also what also is not a bust is a player, of course, that didn't have high expectations. And I think in the last video I used Isaiah Thomas as an example. Now, what I did is I pulled up the 2011 draft from NBAreference.com. I pulled up the 2011 draft because it's a kind of a typical draft in terms of players that end up being busts and players that end up being superstars and players that you didn't expect to be great and becomes great. That's a typical. Okay, so like in this draft, Kyrie Irving was the top choice. He was the consensus number 1 pick. All right. And he, of course, got picked by Cleveland, overall number 1. I think we would not consider Kyrie Irving a bust. A couple of things. Of course, his ball handling and offensive skills are, I guess we could, just put it lightly, say elite. Okay. And so he would draw fans because of his skills. People want to see him play. He's entertaining. And it's possible he could be obviously a piece for a playoff team or a championship team. And of course, Cleveland was one of the worst teams in the previous season, which is why they had the opportunity to draft him number 1 overall. But then the second pick was Derek Williams out of Arizona. Derek Williams was 6'8", 240 pounds and had he could jump like say 40-inch leap. And so with those athletic ability, people were drooling and were like, oh, we got to pick this kid. Now, we know if you follow basketball, athletic ability is great, but it's got to be functional. What do I mean by that? It's got to be used to do something other than dunk. Okay, you have to have some skills to go with that athletic ability. So, like a player like Isaac Okoro, a lot of people saying he can't shoot. No, I don't think he can shoot very well at this point. But he's extremely athletic, and his athletic ability he uses on the defensive end to cover ground. And he uses that athletic ability to turn other players' shots into Windex on the glass. So so it's functional. It's not just that it's athletically pleasing that he can do a 360 dunk or jump from the foul line and dunk. It's functional. But of course, now that's what people are looking at when they look at an athletic player. And so you see a guy that's 6'8", 240, and you're like, and he jumps through the roof, and you're envisioning a guy that can lead the league in rebounding, a guy that might be, if he has this ability to score, to lead the league in scoring, and definitely be a piece for you to get a championship. Of course, Derrick Williams was a bust. Because one thing he didn't have, with all the athletic ability, he didn't have any basketball IQ. Bad basketball IQ, and which caused him to get lost on defense. And then he didn't have the desire to be great on defense. Now, he played in the NBA for a number of years. I got him here playing for 7 years in the NBA. And that was strictly on his athletic ability. Okay? That's why he played. But he was not worthy. If that draft was to be done today, of course, he would not be drafted number 2 overall. Okay? And then, of course, in the top 10, Enes Kanter, Tristan Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas, Jan Beasley, another bust. Why was Jan Beasley a bust? He was a wing player. And Washington was expecting him to be a defensive player. Like the calling card was defense and high IQ. The problem with Beasley is that those things did not translate to the NBA level. He could play them in Europe. He could play good defense and have high IQ in Europe. But the NBA game is faster than the European game. That's why I'm telling you about some of these kids, y'all, like Denny, that y'all so high on. The NBA game is much faster. And it's not everybody that can adjust to the speed of the NBA game. Beasley was an example of that. Okay? So his defense and his IQ did not translate. And he ended up being out of the league. Okay? Then there was Bismack Biyombo, Brandon Knight, Kemba Walker at 9. And then at 10, well, let me put it this way. At 11 was Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson was at 11. Okay? At 10, drafted one pick before him, was Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer Fredette, in college, he played 4 years of college, okay? His last 2 years, he definitely averaged over 25. I think in his last year of college, he led the nation in scoring. It was like 28, 29, 30 points a game, okay? So he could shoot, and he can shoot the ball. I think he was a 40% three-point shooter on high volume at Brigham Young. So everybody, that's what his calling card was. He could shoot, okay? Now, he came into the league. He got drafted by Sacramento, and he stayed with Sacramento. He got drafted by Milwaukee, but he ended up playing for Sacramento. I think they had a draft night trade, and he ended up playing for Sacramento. But he played his 4 years, but then they started fading away. And what happened with Jimmer Fredette? He could shoot the ball, okay? But in the NBA, of course, you have to do other things. So he had to play some defense. Now, they weren't expecting him to be a stellar defensive player, but at least competent defensive player, and then shoot the ball, okay? Problem was with Fredette is that the effort that he had to put in to play even average defense in the NBA took away from his shooting ability. See, it takes energy to play the defense. So if you're in college and you can come down and nobody's sticking you full court and they run a couple of picks for you and you're wide open and you're a good shooter, you're going to beat Jimmy Fredette. Okay. But if you come in the NBA and they're very physical and they're fast and they're strong, and then you got to guard them. And then after you waste a lot of energy doing that, then you're going to get an open shot and you're going to have pressure. It's a whole different ballgame. And that's why he didn't make it. His shooting, in a way you could say it translated, but when it came to the other parts of the game that he had to play with the shooting, his shooting suffered as a result of that. Now, Jimmer Fredette didn't make it in the NBA. He's in China averaging like 40 a game. Because it's a different speed. It's a different game. There's not as much athleticism. So a bust goes 4 years, and whatever they're calling, and that's the thing now. When you are being drafted in the lottery of the NBA, and let's look at some of the other players. They had Klay Thompson, then the Morris brothers, Markieff and Moke, And then at number 15, Kawhi Leonard, probably the best player in this draft at 15. Then you had Nikola Vucevic. He just signed a huge deal and he's playing very well for Orlando. I think he made it all-star team. Then you go down, you got some other decent players, Kenneth Faried, Nikola Mirotic, drafted at 23, Reggie Jackson, Marshawn Brooks. These are decent players. Then the 29, Corey Joseph, and the 30th player chosen. The 30th player, Jimmy Butler. Now, see, and this is typical. They're going to be busts in the first 14, the first 10. Okay. They're going to be busts there. They're going to be players that people thought was okay between, 10 and 20. And then there's going to be somebody in there that's going to pop. And you didn't think they was going to pop. It's not based on and it's not based on how good they were in college. It's based on how they develop. See, some players are late bloomers and you got to, of course, they work very hard and they pop later. A la Kevin Knox. Okay. So you got, and I likened it unto two things. The last video I told y'all, think of a building. You're contracted to build a building. The building is supposed to take 4 years to complete. Okay. When you go to the site, you're working with engineers, you're working with contractors, you're working with architects. You go to the site, it's just a big hole in the ground. Doesn't look like much. Okay. And then you bring in all these heavy equipment, you bring in all the things, those are your developing coaches. You bring in experts that run the machines and you start to see something build up. Maybe after year 3, it's not completed. You're wondering, is this thing going to make it? And then it's year 4, it should be completed. This is what we're dealing with the players. And people get upset, or not upset. Let me not get strong. Let me not get hyped with that. But people get disappointed when they see like a Kevin Knox and they see him get 13 points a game his rookie year and then apparently regress his second year. Listen, it's like the stock market. If you ever follow the stock market, okay, the stock market goes up and it goes down. It could go up 1,000 points and go down 500 points. But in the whole history of the stock market in the United States, there's only been one 10-year period that was negative. I think that was between 2000 and 2009, something like that, when they were doing all that 9/11 stuff. But other than that, if you wait 10 years, no matter what it looks like in the interim, 3 years, 4 years, it's going to be positive based on where you started. It's like that with these players, except it's over a 4-year period or even a 5 or 6 year period, depending. Like Marcus Smart was drafted by the Celtics. Marcus Smart is a career 31% 3-point shooter. Marcus Smart is 6'3". He's a smallish cat, but he was drafted in the lottery because the boy can guard 1 through 5. They've had, when KP was on the Knicks, they sometimes had Marcus Smart guarding him. Okay. And then once in a while, like the other day against, in the playoffs, he hit 6 threes. Okay. So you have to be patient with a player and you have a reason for drafting him. So Marcus Smart is their defensive stopper. They just put him on whoever the other team's best scorer is. Okay. Then you surround him with other players that can shoot and play defense and have high IQ, which is why Boston is playing the way they're playing right now. They really, doing well in the playoffs right now. Okay. So, and of course, speaking of Boston, they have had the same coach for a while. They had Doc Rivers, and Doc Rivers they didn't fire him. He chose to go to Clippers for more money. And then they got Brad Stevens, and that's been their coach. Like since 2015, they've had the same coach. And of course, Danny Ainge has been the executive from 2003. See, so they have had a stable organization, so stable that a lot of their assistant coaches end up becoming head coaches, like Tom Thibodeau. Okay, so that's what with the Knicks, you have all of these issues. You have unstable management. You have coaches that are being, rotated like a merry-go-round. And then you got impatient fans. All of this contributes to a losing organization. So I'm hoping with Leon Rose and the crew that he brought in, Perrin, Tibbs, Woody. They keep this together for a minute and develop these players that we got. Okay? Now, we talked about what is not a bust. What is a bust? First off, when you come into the draft, especially in the lottery, you got to bring something to the table. You got to bring something to the table. Again, let's look at the draft that I'm looking at here for 2011. Let's look at the lottery and see what each player brings to the table. So you have Kyrie Irving, ball handling, scoring, right? That's what he brought to the table. Speed, quickness, finishing ability. He brought that to the table. And of course it translated. Derek Williams, 6'8", 240 size. Athleticism, 40-inch vertical. He brought that to the table. That did translate, but he didn't have anything else. So beware of players that are tremendously athletic and their athleticism is not functional. It's not translating into anything. Okay, don't just get caught up because somebody could touch the roof with jump and touch the top of the backboard. Okay, that's not going to win you ball games unless they got other skills. Enes Kanter, he was drafted 3rd overall. He came out of Turkey. He was supposed to go to Kentucky, but they didn't allow him because he played pro ball in Europe. So what does he bring to, well, definitely not defense. We know that in the Knicks fan, but offensive rebounding. He is definitely one of the best offensive rebounders in basketball. Okay. He brings that to the table. Now you don't want to build your team around that because he's going to get beat on defense. He's going to give away as much as he gets. That's a guy you use in limited minutes off the bench, but he's not worth the top 3, right? Tristan Thompson, defense, rebounding. He's come through on that. Definitely has. Okay. Defense, rebound, Tristan Thompson. Jonas Valanciunas, same thing. Defense, rebounding. Same thing. He's done the same thing. Bismack Biyombo, defense, rebounding. Kemba Walker, scorer out of UConn, big time shot maker. That's how they won the NCAA. Kemba Walker basically carried a UConn team that had no business in the Final Four all the way. Jimmy Fredette, shooter. Klay Thompson, shooter. Marquise and Marcus Morris were going to be 4s or 3s in the league, defenders, rebounders, good all-around players, and they've proven to do that. And then, of course, Kawhi Leonard, 15, was a defensive player. He was drafted for his defense, which, of course, he come in and do that. He definitely could do that. But then he developed under San Antonio system an offensive game. So that now, of course, he's one of the top 5 players in the NBA. Okay. And so each of these bring these. Now, the question is, of course, are these skills translatable? Can they translate to the NBA? So in Kyrie's case, they did, right? Derek Williams is still athletic, but he had no other skills. Enes Kanter can still offensive rebound, but his defense never developed. Tristan Thompson was definitely translatable, as was Jonas Valanciunas. Jan Veasley did not translate. Okay. Biyombo, he translated, though I think they were expecting more from him. Okay. Brandon Knight from Kentucky, he translated, but he'd been hurt a lot. Okay. Kemba definitely translated. Jimmer did not. Klay Thompson did. There's Alec Burks. He was drafted 12th out of Colorado. He's played 9 years in the league. He carved out a niche in the league. He wasn't going to be a franchise player, but he's been a playoff piece, definitely, for Utah. And then you got the Morris brothers. They definitely translated. And, of course, Kawhi translated. All his skills translated and got and developed more on top of that. So you want the skill they bring into the table to translate. The problem is the potential busts are guys, either A, their skill that they bring in, like a Jimmy Fredette, does not translate to the NBA, or like a Jan Veasley doesn't translate to the NBA. Okay, or B, they don't have anything that pops out, and that's why I'm very concerned, and I'm glad that Chicago wants Denny, because I don't see anything popping out from this kid. The game is slower in Israel than it is in the NBA. Okay. And he does, even in there, he's not a tremendous shooter. He shot 27.7%. Let's give him 28% this past season in Maccabi. 28% in Israel. Okay. Then he's pretty athletic, but he's not super athletic. He's pretty good on defense, but he's not great on defense. He's got a good IQ, definitely, but it's not great. He does everything a little bit, but nothing pops out. These are your bust type of players. Now, unless he comes and in his 4-year period, something pops. Okay. I think he's had high bust potential. And actually, so does LaMelo Ball. He can't shoot. He can't shoot. Okay. And he doesn't show any propensity to play defense. He's a playmaker. Okay. So we're depending on him as a playmaker to translate. And maybe it will. Okay. It could translate. I don't know. But then again, it may not be enough. I see with that guy, with Ball, he reminds me really, I remember when Ricky Rubio was coming out of Europe. Same thing. Very high playmaking ability and not a great shooter. Okay. Now, over the time, he was drafted by Minnesota and they actually stashed him for a little bit. He didn't come right away because he was like 18 or 19, just like Ball. But when he did come, he did play good defense. He does move the ball. He's a tremendous passer. He's a decent shooter. He's improved his shooting. He's still not a great shooter by any stretch. And he proved to be a solid NBA player. Is he a superstar? No. Would you draft him number 1 overall? No. Okay. Now, the thing about Ball that's different from Rubio is that Ball, because of his father and his in the media hype, he's going to sell tickets, right? He's going to be a draw to the fans. Remember now, this is a business. Now, I don't know how many games they're going to win, whoever draft him, but people are going to definitely want to pay to come see this kid play, especially his first couple of years where the media is hyping him. Okay. So if the owner wants to sell tickets, a team like a Charlotte, I don't know who's going to get it, but I'm saying a team like a Charlotte that's picking in the top 3. Oh man, they would love it because they're going to fill their stadium. You know, Jordan would love that. Okay. So that's Ball, but he has high bust potential because of his lack of showing anything as a shooter at all, even a foul shooter or jump shooter, and his lack of defense. We don't know. Okay. Rubio plays defense. I don't know if LaMelo Ball does. All right. So this is what we're dealing with. Now, with our own players, Kevin Knox is he just completed his 2nd year. People are like, well, he regressed. He's not improving. You don't even, the cake is in the oven. Don't even look at it until 4 years. Don't even look at it. Just let him get better every day. Now, if he wasn't showing up to work hard every day, that would be a problem. Okay. But he is. The boy busting his butt every day trying to get better. All right. Also, if you notice Kevin Knox, but the first thing struck out at me, and I'm not trying to be funny, but he got big feet and he's gangly like a kid. Okay. That told me when I saw him that he did not grow into his man's body. Of course, he was 18 and he's now 20. He still hasn't grown into his man's body. Okay. When he grows into his man's body where his muscle and his bones catch up with his feet, then he'll be more coordinated. He's playing in the NBA against the best players in the world, and he's not quite full grown yet as a man. So he's going to look bad. He's going to look weak. Okay. So, chill out on Knox for a minute. Let him get a chance to see what he's going to be. And with Tibbs and Kenny Payne on board, that whole motor thing, they're going to put their foot in his butt. There's no question. So let's see what happens. Maybe he responds positively and then all of a sudden he has that ferocious attitude. He gets ferocious out there and he starts to be a man and he can play. Maybe he doesn't, but we need 2 more seasons before we start to talk about getting rid of him. Okay. Dennis Smith Jr. Dennis Smith Jr. is not a bust. He just finished his 3rd year. He is drafted as a point guard, but I think we understand that Dennis Smith Jr. is not a point guard. He's not a point guard. He's an off guard. He's a scoring guard. Okay. His athleticism has not translated either in his defense or in rebounding or anything. He could just dunk. Okay. You need to have a skill. I believe he'll be able to develop it, but we got to put him in the right position. He's a guy that could really use some G League time, just to have somebody working with him and honing him and developing him. I don't know if the Knicks are going to do it, but, wherever he goes. And I had another video where I suggested he go to Charlotte. They sent him to Charlotte because that's where he's from. I think it'll give him a fresh start. I think they can develop him. He's an off guard. Like Devontae Graham is only like 6'1", and he's not a point guard. He's an off guard. Okay, that seems to be a trend. Like Kyrie Irving, even though they call him a point guard, he's not a point guard. He's an off guard. He don't set up and initiate the offense. He's not doing that. And that's Dennis Smith too. So I don't think we should give up on the kid. But with the way things are going, they might use him as a trade chip with Randall. But it is what it is. But he's athletic, but it's not functional. It's not being used to develop any skill. Okay. Then of course there's Frank. And I don't understand, I do understand. Let me just put it this way. There's younger guys that are into NBA 2K that's raised in this millennial age that's looking at players like a Derrick Rose or Kyrie Irving, and they want a guard that scores. Okay. And they're calling that the point guard. And someone pointed out, and I want to give him props. I don't remember your name right now, but he pointed out that even on Irving's team, when Irving won the championship, LeBron initiated the offense. In Golden State, Draymond Green initiates the offense. You need somebody that's going to initiate the offense if your point guard is not going to do it. Okay? Frank can initiate the offense. Frank already plays elite defense. Frank just finished his third year with his fourth coach in a dysfunctional organization. Comparing to Marcus Smart, if you look at their stats from their third year, they're almost identical. Okay? Frank shoots a little better than Marcus Smart. Frank has a 7-foot wingspan. Marcus Smart does not. But both of them are defenders. It was after that third year, Marcus Smart started winning all NBA defense. You got to give these guys some time and stop and that's another thing. Knicks fans looking for the shiny object across the street, man. We trying to win here. All right. You got to have some defense. So none of our players are busts right now. None of our young guys. They all need a development. And I'm glad we hired this crew, even though it's better late than never, but at least we have something going on where we can start to develop these young guys. Okay. So a bust is a player who's either the skill they brought to the table did not translate, or they never developed any skill to be able to play in the NBA on an elite level. That's a bust. You can't judge a player within that 4-year period, that 4-year window, and say they're a bust yet. You can't do that. It's not fair to the player. It's not right. And that's why, again, the Knicks have had many players that they have drafted that go to other teams and are contributing players on playoff teams. Okay? Because we didn't handle them right. We expected things of them they weren't supposed to do. We put them in the wrong position. We didn't develop them. And then other teams did. And this is the thing. In New York, because we are New York, we have a lot of money. We got a lot of prestige. We got a lot of media. But think about it like this. There's small market teams like your Oklahoma Cities, your Indianas, and even like Miami, even though it's not a small market, there's mostly Knicks fans in Miami. So they don't get, the prestige all the time, but they have solid organizations. They have solid development. They keep their crew intact and they develop players. And or San Antonio is better than Miami. San Antonio. Because players do want to go to Miami because not only the team, but the weather. But San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Indiana, they have learned that they got to make do with what they get in the draft. They got to make do with their own players and develop them. And they do a tremendous job. Okay, do a tremendous job. Boston is also in that scenario because the only big name free agent they signed before they traded for Kyrie, but before they signed Kemba as a free agent was Al Horford. Because, Boston got racial issues in that city and always have. And so they've also had to develop their own players. So the Knicks need to take notes from these, especially Miami, take notes from San Antonio and see how they develop. Should I say the Knicks? Knicks fans. See how these teams have developed. See how they built their culture. See what they did with players that sometimes none didn't even get drafted. Or Duncan Robinson was on the scrap heap after he got drafted. And now they're playoff pieces. We already have playoff pieces. They're not busts. We need to develop them and get the most out of them. And then we can be also a Miami, a San Antonio. We could do that. Y'all gotta let it happen though. Peace.